Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be going over the Week 12 slate on DraftKings. We have 10 games for Week 12. I'm going to go through each position and talk about some of my favorite plays on this slate: quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, and defense. We'll cover it all. Studs I like, the mid-tier plays, and if there's value at any position, I'll try and touch on that as well. But before we do get started, guys, I would appreciate it if you would drop a like on the video. It really does help me out a lot, and if you are new to the channel, then make sure you click that subscribe button down below, so that way you won't miss out on any of my new videos. And if you are planning to play the Thursday slate, the Thanksgiving Day slate with 3 games, I did make a video on that. It went up Monday afternoon, so if you want to check that video out, I would definitely appreciate it. But yeah, let's go ahead and look at this Week 12 main slate. Start off at quarterback. Most expensive quarterback is Tom Brady, $6,500. Really don't have a ton of interest in Brady. Probably my favorite pay-up option at quarterback this week is Cam Newton. I definitely like him at $6,200 at home against the Seahawks. I think this is a really good spot for Cam Newton. I think he stands out as like the best point per dollar play if you're paying up at quarterback. But there are some good plays under $6K. I don't think Cam is a must. I expect to have a pretty decent amount of him, but do like some of the value you get at quarterback. Jameis Winston's going to be starting for the Bucks. He's $6K, which feels a little bit too much to pay for Jameis Winston. But he is facing the 49ers. 49ers have a terrible defense. I do like Winston. Don't love the price. I'd rather play Cam. I feel safer playing Cam. But Winston does have a good matchup this week if you want to roll him out there. But I definitely like Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers, I expect to be one of my highest owned quarterbacks. Probably him and Cam. I'm going to have the most exposure to at quarterback. Just really like Rivers. I like his price here at $5,800. Against the Cardinals, just really not a good defense. As long as this game can stay competitive, I expect Rivers to be throwing the ball a lot. I like Keenan Allen a ton this week. I'm probably going to be pairing him with Rivers in a lot of lineups. Definitely going to be pairing him in the core in this video. Rivers I like, though, at $5,800 as a value quarterback. I expect a lot of people will go to Lamar Jackson, and I do like Lamar Jackson this week. He has a great matchup against the Raiders. His rushing upside just is what makes him so valuable for fantasy. He ran the ball 27 times last week against the Bengals. Threw the ball 19 times, went 13 for 19, 150 yards, and then had 27 rushes for 117 yards. Definitely gives you that rushing upside. Probably could get you the 100-yard bonus on DraftKings again this week. So I do like Lamar Jackson. I feel safer going to Rivers, but I definitely am going to have exposure to Jackson at $5,700. I don't love that he got priced up, but still probably going to have some exposure to him. And then I think the last quarterback I want to mention is Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, as of late, has been pretty good for fantasy, and I do like this spot here against the Panthers. I expect the Seahawks to probably be trailing in this game. I think Russell Wilson makes sense as a value quarterback. He's been throwing the ball a lot lately. He's been very efficient. He's got 2 or more touchdowns in, I believe, every game this year, besides 1 against Arizona. He's thrown 2 or more touchdowns in every game besides 1, so good spot for Russell Wilson. I think this game has a lot of appeal if you want to stack it. I do like some plays from both sides. Obviously, I talked about Cam. I think Cam is a good pay-up option at quarterback. But Rivers, if you want to go to Winston, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, these are kind of the value guys that I like. Maybe Nick Mullins against the Bucks if he starts again. Great matchup for Nick Mullins. $5,400 though, kind of feels a little bit too much. I feel like I'd rather get up to Russell Wilson or some of the other guys, but Nick Mullins might have a little bit of exposure to him across my 150. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to running back now. Usually always a position I try and fit in some of the studs. We do have Saquon Barkley, most expensive running back. He's $9,100 against the Eagles. Then you have Melvin Gordon, $8,600 against the Cardinals. Obviously both guys you could pay up for, but I do like some of the cheaper options we have, some of these mid-tier plays. Like McCaffrey, Gordon, Barkley, I'll have in some of my lineups, but I don't expect them to be like massively owned in my lineups. Like I don't expect to be like 40% or more on these guys. I definitely like these mid-tier plays. Starting off with Joe Mixon. I really like Joe Mixon here, and I like his price, his matchup. Against the Browns, not a very good team defensively against the run. This is a great spot for Joe Mixon. He hasn't been getting a ton of work lately, which does scare me a bit. Last game against Baltimore, just 12 carries and 3 receptions, so just 15 touches. With Giovanni Bernard back, that does cut into a little bit of Joe Mixon's workload. But the price tag reflects it. He's down to $6,800, and this is a really good matchup for him. He's still involved in the passing game, even though he hasn't been getting a ton of targets lately. He still is involved in the passing game, still will get carries. Definitely like Joe Mixon here at $6,800. think he's a really good play against the Browns. And then Leonard Fournette, another guy that really stands out, especially his price. Leonard Fournette, since coming back from injury, has just been seeing a massive workload. First game back from injury against the Colts, he touched the ball 29 times. And then last game against the Steelers, he touched the ball 30 times, got 28 carries and 2 catches. Against the Colts, 24 carries and 5 catches. Dude's getting a massive workload. He's been great off injury, 27, 22 DraftKings points. Gets another great matchup here against the Bills. Love Leonard Fournette this week. Definitely going to be probably my highest owned running back. When you factor in his price, just how he projects, he probably projects as one of the best point per dollar running backs this week. So love him at running back. Him and Joe Mixon in that mid-range, I think, do make a ton of sense this week. And if we're trying to find value at this position, right now, early looks at this slate, there isn't a ton of value I love. Potentially Jalen Richard for Oakland. I expect Oakland to be very thin when it comes to pass-catching options this week. Jordy Nelson is questionable. Brandon LaFell got put on IR, so the Raiders are going to be really thin when it comes to pass-catching options. Last week against the Cardinals, Jalen Richard did get 11 carries, also got 4 targets. I'd expect a similar workload, maybe some more targets, especially if you think Raiders are going to be trailing in this game, which they most likely will be. Most likely going to have to throw. Jalen Richard, definitely a value option you can go to at 4,300. But that's probably it for me at value. Maybe Phillip Lindsay. His workload's been somewhat steady as of late, even with Royce Freeman coming back. Lindsay still had a decent game last week against the Chargers, had 26 DraftKings points, 11 carries, 79 yards, 4 catches, did get 2 rushing touchdowns. He got 5 targets. So he got about 15 touches last week. I'd expect a similar workload for Phillip Lindsay. Don't love the matchup against the Steelers, but at 5,600, pretty fair price for him. I expect him to be a decent option this week if you want to go there at the mid-range. But let's go ahead and move on to receiver now. You have Odell, AB, some of the top options at this position. Odell's the most expensive receiver at 8,800. He gets a great matchup this week against the Eagles, who have just been getting torched by wide receiver ones this year. This is a great spot for Odell, but the price tag for me, I don't see myself getting a ton of Odell. I think I'd rather play the expensive running backs over Odell. I think I'd rather play Barkley, rather play Melvin Gordon. I do like the matchup, but the price is what's going to keep me off Odell. I will have a little bit. I will still have some exposure to him, but don't expect to have a massive amount of exposure pretty much to him or AB. They're just really expensive this week, and I feel like I can get a higher floor and a higher ceiling out of the expensive running backs. So I mentioned Keenan Allen at receiver. He's probably my favorite guy to pay up for. He's 7,100 against the Cardinals. I expect him to probably avoid Patrick Peterson for a decent amount of this game. Keenan Allen will will run some of his routes from the slot, and I don't believe Patrick Peterson travels or he doesn't shadow, so he's not going to follow Keenan Allen around. He pretty much sticks to one side of the field. So this is a good spot for Keenan Allen. The targets have been there lately. I believe that's 31 targets last 3 games, 36 last 4 games. Pretty much can pencil him in for about 8 to 12 targets. And the fantasy production's been there. 12, 24, 17, 24 DraftKings points the last 4 games. He scored in 2 straight games. I think he keeps that up this week. I think we get another end zone, or we get Keenan Allen in the end zone again this week. And I definitely like playing him and Phillip Rivers, doing that little stack. They're both relatively cheap for what their production is. Keenan Allen at 7,100 feels a little underpriced, and Phillip Rivers at 5,800 also feels underpriced. So definitely love both of those guys. And then other receivers we could possibly go to. I was on T.Y. Hilton last week, had a monster game. Don't mind going back to the well. Don't love him as much this week, but T.Y. Hilton, anytime this guy's at home and he has a favorable matchup, he is definitely in consideration for me, especially now that Andrew Luck's healthy and throwing the ball deep downfield. T.Y. Hilton, definitely going to be a guy I play again this week. But now let's try and find some value receivers. So I definitely like Emmanuel Sanders as a value receiver. He is just 5,500. Point per dollar wise, what you project for him, he does seem like a pretty good point per dollar play. I'd probably project Sanders for about 12, 13 DraftKings points, and at 5,500, definitely stands out as a good play. Obviously, he has more than 12, 13 point upside. Sanders is the number 1 receiver for the Broncos. He's going to get the targets. Against the Steelers, pretty good chance the Broncos are playing from behind this game and have to throw. I project Sanders for about 7, 8 targets. He has potential to get more. And I just feel like this is a big game. Big game's coming for Emmanuel Sanders. I like him a ton at 5,500. He just stands out as like a really good point per dollar option. If you just look at some of the other receivers in that price range, I think he's my favorite one out of all the 5K receivers. I do like Doug Baldwin, though, at 5,100. Doug Baldwin's been seeing pretty decent targets lately. If you want to stack that game, if you want to play like maybe Russ and Doug Baldwin, then Newton, or not Newton, but if you want to play Russ, Doug Baldwin, then McCaffrey on the other side, maybe DJ Moore. Game does have some stack appeal. I like some of the Seahawks receivers. I do like Doug Baldwin at 5,100. Then sub 5K value receivers. DJ Moore coming off a big game last week. Had 8 targets against Detroit, 7 catches, 157 yards and a touchdown, 31 DraftKings points. I don't think you're point chasing if you play DJ Moore this week. The targets have been there pretty much week to week. Even though he hasn't seen a ton of targets in week 10 and week 9, he's still getting about 5 to 6 targets a game. He has big play upside. He's also getting involved in they use him in end rounds and stuff, so he gets some carries as well sometimes. I don't mind DJ Moore at 4,600 as a value play. I don't think that's point chasing if you go after him this week. Also want to mention Adam Humphries. He's 4K against the 49ers. Great matchup. Humphries, as of late, has been good for fantasy. 14, 28, 7, and 15 DraftKings points. Targets have been there. Week 8, 10 targets. Week 9, 8 targets. Just 3 and 5 targets the last 2 weeks. But Jameis Winston is going to be starting for the Bucs, so that should help Humphries. Humphries is usually better when Jameis Winston is in at quarterback. So at 4K as a value receiver, I don't see myself having Humphries in a ton of lineups, but definitely going to be a guy I look to if I'm trying to find value at this position. He's only 4K. I feel like he can get 5-6 targets and could possibly get in the end zone in a good matchup against the 49ers. So if you want to go cheap, I do like him at 4K. But that's probably it for value receivers. Let's go ahead and move on to tight end now. Zach Ertz, George Kittle, the top two studs at this position. And we also have Gronk, who's down to 5,100 in price, which just really baffles me. I don't even know if Gronk's going to play this week. He's expected to be available for the Patriots' next game, November 25th, which would be this week, so Gronk is expected to be back. 5,100 for Gronk almost seems like you have to play him. The guy's been so up and down this year. You just don't know what you're going to get from Gronk. I'll probably be paying up for Gronk, though. I don't even know if you could consider that paying up. 5,100 for Gronk against the Jets. Just seems like, gosh, if Gronk's healthy, if you think he's healthy here, you pretty much have to go almost all in on him. A healthy Gronk at 5,100, just, wow, that's crazy. So if Gronk's going to be active and going to be playing this week, I don't see myself getting a ton of Ertz or Kittle. I'm probably going to be playing Gronk a lot, probably going to regret it, but 5,100 for him, just too cheap of a price tag. There is value, though, at this position. O.J. Howard listed as questionable, so that could open up some value if O.J. Howard's unable to play. Cameron Brate probably becomes the top value play at tight end. He's only 3,600. With Jameis Winston in at quarterback, that's going to help Brate a lot. We know Winston will target Brate a ton. I do like him as a value play. If A.J. Green doesn't return this week, C.J. Uzomah, 3,300 against the Browns. If you're trying to go cheap at this position, I do like him as well. And David Njoku, a guy I've been playing all year, don't mind going to him at 3,800. Even though he's been disappointing lately, just 5 and 1 target. The last 2 games, 0 targets against Pittsburgh. I don't expect David Njoku to be very popular, especially with how he's played as of late, has not been very good. Don't expect him to be popular, but he's cheap this week, 3,800. Don't mind him as a value play. But if Gronk's going to be healthy and going to be ready to go, I see myself getting a lot of Gronk at 5,100, just really cheap price tag for him. So yeah, I think that's probably it for tight end plays. Let's go ahead and move on to defense now. So Jaguars, most expensive defense, great spot for them against the Bills. But I think my favorite pay-up defense is probably the Ravens against the Raiders. The Raiders' offense is just so bad. Derek Carr just hasn't looked good this year. He's been turning the ball over. He'll take sacks. The Ravens are at home. They're one of the cheaper stud defenses. They're only 3,300. So I do like paying up for them if you can get up to the Ravens. But I always try and go cheap at defense, try and find some value. If you don't think the Seahawks are going to be able to put up points, then you do have the Panthers defense at 2,600 against Russell Wilson, who has been getting sacked a lot this year. I don't mind the Panthers defense, especially if you're not playing any Seahawks. The Bengals defense is 2,500 at home against the Browns. That really stands out to me. Both Bucs and 49ers defense are pretty cheap. The Bucs get the 49ers at home. Bucs don't have a great defense, but they're cheap. They're at home. They're facing a bad offense. Same can be said for the 49ers. They're facing a bad offense, Jameis Winston. Even though I do like him this week, we know he will still turn the ball over a ton. Will still take some sacks, make some stupid decisions. So the 49ers defense is a cheap defense you could also consider. And then last one, possibly the Eagles as well. Eagles are at home at 2,400 facing Eli Manning. Definitely like them as a value defense as well. But that's probably it for defense for me. And I think that's it for the video, guys. So hopefully you did enjoy this video. Hopefully it did help you. If you enjoyed the video, just make sure you click that like button. I would really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe if you have not already. And if you do have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at the DFS_GOAT, or you can leave a comment down below, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you check out my video on the Thanksgiving Day slate. If you want to see some of my thoughts and opinions on that 3-gamer, I would appreciate it. But yeah, guys, good luck this week. We'll see you back in the next one. Peace.